My name is Avery Brooks, and this is my story. I spent most of my life believing that family meant protecting the people you loved, no matter how much it cost you. I worked hard, sacrificed more than I should have, and trusted the people closest to me. Then one day, I discovered that someone I never expected to betray me had already made a decision that would change my life forever. A decision I had no idea was coming. And by the time I learned the truth, it was already too late to turn back. This is a story about betrayal, an unexpected marriage, and a woman who learned that sometimes losing control of your life is what finally teaches you how to take it back. Let's dive into it. Avery had grown up believing that the house on Willow Creek Road was the safest place in the world. Her mother and father had bought it when they were newly married, long before Avery was born. It wasn't a mansion or anything particularly grand, but to Avery, it had always felt priceless. Her mother had filled the kitchen with the smell of cinnamon rolls every Sunday morning. Her father had built the wooden shelves in the living room with his own hands. And behind the house stood the small bakery that had eventually become the center of their lives. Avery still remembered watching her parents work there together when she was a child. Her mother handled the baking. Her father handled the customers. They argued over little things, laughed 5 minutes later, and somehow managed to turn a tiny neighborhood bakery into something people lined up for every morning. That bakery was more than a business. It was their dream, and Avery had grown up watching them build it. Then, when Avery was 17, her mother died. The house became quieter after that. Her father tried to keep everything together, but the grief changed him. A few years later, he met Monica. Monica was charming, confident, and warm whenever other people were watching. She knew exactly what to say to Avery's father. And for a while, Avery believed her father had finally found someone who could make him happy again. She was wrong. She just didn't know it yet. For the first few years after Avery's father married Monica, Avery tried to make things work. She was old enough to understand that Monica was not her mother, but young enough to believe that they could still become something close to a family. Monica made sure Avery believed that too. In front of my father, she treated me with affection. She asked about my classes, brought me small gifts on my birthday, and told people how proud she was of me. But when my father wasn't around, things were different. She began complaining about how much the house cost to maintain. Then it was the bakery. Then it was my education. Everything became a burden. My father didn't notice at first. He was too busy trying to keep the bakery growing. By then, the little shop my parents had started had become popular. We had regular customers who had been coming since I was a child, and my father's dream was to eventually open a second location. But Monica had other plans. She liked expensive things, designer handbags, jewelry, fancy dinners, weekend trips. My father earned well from the bakery, but he was careful with money. He knew exactly how hard they had worked to build it. Monica didn't share that caution. She began taking money from the business account. At first, my father assumed she was using it for household expenses. Then the amounts became larger. One evening, I overheard them arguing in the kitchen. "You can't keep withdrawing money from the bakery," my father said. Monica's voice was sharp. "I'm your wife. I shouldn't have to beg you for money. You have access to our household account. That's not enough." Avery stood silently at the bottom of the stairs. She didn't want to listen, but she couldn't make herself walk away. My father sighed. "We have employees to pay, suppliers, taxes. The bakery isn't a personal account." Monica laughed bitterly. "Everything is always about that bakery, because that bakery is what pays for this house. Then maybe you should make more money." My father went quiet. Avery had never heard Monica speak to him like that. The next morning, everything looked normal again. Breakfast was on the table. Monica smiled. Her lipstick was perfect. Her hair was perfectly styled. And my father acted as though the argument had never happened. Avery learned something that morning. Some families didn't break apart in one dramatic moment. Sometimes they broke quietly. One secret, one lie, one unpaid bill at a time. Then, 2 years later, Avery's father died. There was no warning. One day, he was standing behind the bakery counter, teasing Avery about how badly she had decorated a birthday cake. The next day, he was gone. The funeral passed in a blur. People came. They hugged Avery. They told her that her father had been a good man. She heard the words, but none of them reached her. When everyone left, Avery stood alone in the bakery after closing. Her father's apron was still hanging behind the counter. She touched it and finally broke down. Monica came in a few minutes later. She didn't hug me. She didn't cry. She simply looked around the bakery and said that we needed to talk about money. Avery stared at her. Her father had been buried that morning, and Monica was already thinking about money. What about it? Avery asked. There are debts. Avery felt her stomach tighten. What debts? Monica looked away. Your father had loans. How much? She didn't answer immediately. Then she gave Avery a number. Avery thought she had misheard her. That much? She nodded. The bakery isn't worth that much, Avery said. We'll have to sell something. Her heart sank. What? The house, perhaps? No. The answer came out before Avery could think. This house belonged to her parents. Monica shrugged. Your father is dead. Things have changed. Avery looked at her. No, they haven't. He built this place. So did my mother. And I'm not letting you sell it. Monica's expression hardened. Then you better figure out how we're going to pay the debts. That was how it began. Avery took on more work. She woke before sunrise. She worked at the bakery until late at night. She handled orders, suppliers, payroll, and accounts. Whatever money she made outside the bakery went toward the debt. For a while, she thought she could fix everything. Then another bill appeared. Then another. Every time Avery asked Monica where the money had gone, Monica had an explanation. The roof needed repairs. The house needed work. There had been an emergency. She had borrowed money for the bakery. And every time Avery believed her. Until one afternoon, she found a stack of credit card statements in the study. Luxury department stores, jewelry boutiques, 5-star hotels, restaurants. Avery's hands began to shake. She went straight to Monica's room. What is this? Monica looked at the papers in my hand and didn't even pretend to be surprised. You went through my things? These charges are on the account. So? You told me the money was going toward the bakery. Monica rolled her eyes. I needed those things. Needed them? You don't understand what it's like to maintain a certain standard. Avery stared at her. My parents built this bakery with their hands. And you're spending its money on handbags? Monica stood. Be careful how you speak to me. Or what? Monica smiled coldly. And this is not your house. Avery's face went pale. What did you say? Monica stepped closer. You may work here. You may live here. You may think you're protecting your parents' legacy. But legally, things are more complicated than you realize. Avery stared at her. For the first time, she wondered how much Monica had been hiding. She didn't know that the answer was far worse than she imagined. Avery waited until Monica left the room before she returned to the study. She pulled open every drawer. She searched through folders, envelopes, bank statements, and old business records until she found the documents Monica had been talking about. Her father's will was at the bottom of a locked cabinet. Avery read it twice. Then a third time. The house and bakery had been left to her. Not to Monica, to Avery. Monica had been given the right to live in the house as long as she remained a member of the family. But the property itself belonged to Avery. Avery's hands stopped shaking. For the first time in months, she felt hopeful. Then she found the loan agreements. Her hope disappeared. Monica had taken several loans using the property as collateral. Some had been taken after her father's death. Some had been taken without Avery's knowledge. And the newest one had an outstanding balance large enough to put everything at risk. Avery sat down slowly. How could you do this? Monica appeared in the doorway. I told you there were debts. These are your debts. Monica shrugged. We're family. Avery stood. You used my father's property as collateral. I had to. For what? Monica said nothing. Avery looked at the statements again. The answer was there. Luxury stores, hotels, private clubs, expensive jewelry. You spent the money on yourself. Monica's expression hardened. And? Avery stared at her in disbelief. You could lose everything. No, Monica said calmly. We could lose everything. There's a difference. Avery felt something inside her break. For years, she had worked herself sick because she believed she was saving her family. But there had never been a family to save. There had only been her. And Monica. And the consequences of Monica's choices. From that day forward, Avery stopped trusting her. She took control of the bakery's finances herself. Every dollar was recorded. Every payment was documented. She negotiated with suppliers. She reduced expenses. She worked longer hours. Slowly, the debt began to fall. It wasn't easy. Some nights Avery slept in the office because she was too exhausted to drive home. Some mornings she opened the bakery before the sun came up. But for the first time, she could see a way out. Then Monica borrowed more money. Avery discovered it when the bank sent another notice. She stormed into the house. You promised me you wouldn't take another loan. Monica didn't even look up from her phone. I needed it. You always need it. Avery dropped the letter onto the table. This says the property is being reviewed for foreclosure. Monica finally looked up. Then fix it. Avery laughed bitterly. Fix it? Yes. You're the one who works all the time. You're the one who understands the business. So fix it. Avery stared at her stepmother. I have been fixing your mistakes for years. Monica stood. Then perhaps you should work harder. That night, Avery sat alone in the bakery after closing. The lights were off. Only the glow from the street came through the windows. She looked at the photograph hanging behind the counter. Her parents stood together in front of the bakery, smiling proudly at the little business they had built. I won't let them take it, she whispered. She didn't know that across town, someone was already planning exactly how she would save it. 3 days later, Monica received a phone call from Patricia. I found someone. Monica sat up. Who? The man I told you about. Kang Junho. He's looking for a wife. Monica's eyes narrowed. Tell me everything. He's 34. Korean. Extremely wealthy. He owns several companies and spends most of his time in Atlanta because of his American operations. Why does he need a wife? His grandmother. She's ill. She wants to see him married before she undergoes surgery. And what does the woman get? Patricia laughed softly. A very generous arrangement. Monica was silent. How generous? $20 million. Monica's eyes widened. 20 million? For 1 year. Monica slowly smiled. She had just found her solution. Not for Avery. For herself. She met Patricia the following afternoon. Within a week, everything had been arranged. Junho's lawyer received Avery's basic information. A marriage agreement was prepared. The payment terms were negotiated. And Monica signed the preliminary documents. She did it without Avery's knowledge. The money arrived shortly afterward. Monica immediately paid the bank. The foreclosure threat disappeared. The house was safe. The bakery was safe. And Monica had done it all by selling a future that didn't belong to her. Avery came home that evening exhausted. For once, Monica was waiting for her with a smile. Avery immediately knew something was wrong. Why are you smiling? Because Monica said, your problems are finally over. Avery put her bag down. What did you do? Monica pushed a folder across the table. Avery opened it. Her eyes moved across the first page. Then she stopped breathing. Marriage agreement. She looked up. What is this? Monica leaned back. Your way out. Avery's voice dropped. What did you do? Monica smiled. I found you a husband. Avery stared at her. A husband? Monica folded her arms. His name is Kang Junho. Who is he? A businessman. That doesn't answer my question. He's Korean. He's wealthy. He's respectable. and he needs a wife. Avery slowly closed the folder. Then find someone else. Monica's smile disappeared. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You made a decision about my life without asking me. Because if I had asked, you would have said no. Exactly. Monica leaned forward. And if you say no, the bank takes the house. Avery went still. What? The money from this arrangement has already cleared the debt. Avery looked at her. Already? Monica nodded. The house is safe. The bakery is safe. Everything your parents left you is safe. Avery's hands tightened around the folder. You took his money already. Yes. Before I knew anything? Yes. Avery felt sick. You had no right. Monica laughed. Rights don't matter when the bank is standing at your door. Avery stood. I am not marrying a stranger. Then pack your things. Avery stared at her. Monica's voice became cold. You can leave tonight if you want. But don't expect me to stop the bank from taking everything tomorrow. You would really let them take my parents' home? Monica shrugged. You would really let them take it because of your pride? Avery looked toward the hallway. Her mother's photographs were still hanging on the walls. Her father's old coat was still on the hook near the door. She thought about the bakery, the ovens, the display cases, the handwritten recipes her mother had left behind. Everything could disappear, all because Monica had spent years creating debts and then placed the burden of fixing them on Avery. Monica picked up the folder. 1 year. That's all. Avery said nothing. 1 year, Monica repeated. Then you walk away with enough money to start your own life. Avery looked at her. And what happens to the marriage? Nothing. You don't know him. You don't have to love him. You don't even have to share a room with him. It's a contract. Avery laughed bitterly. You're making it sound easy. It is easy. For you. Monica smiled. For me too. Avery looked at her suspiciously. What does that mean? Monica didn't answer. She didn't need to. Avery already knew. Monica had received something from this arrangement. Something she wasn't telling her. That night, Avery barely slept. She sat on the edge of her bed with the marriage agreement in her lap. Every page felt like a betrayal. She thought about calling the bank. But the debt had already been cleared. She thought about calling a lawyer. But she knew she couldn't undo a transaction Monica had already completed without risking the only thing she had left. Her parents' legacy. At 6 the next morning, Avery walked into the bakery. The shop was still dark. She turned on the lights and stood behind the counter. For years, this had been the place where she felt closest to her parents. She could still remember her mother's voice telling her that good bread needed patience. She could still hear her father's laugh whenever a customer complained about waiting too long. Avery touched the old wooden counter. I'm sorry, Mom. Her voice broke. I'm sorry, Dad. She closed her eyes. Then she whispered the words she never thought she would have to say. I'm going to marry him. 3 weeks later, Avery stood in front of a mirror wearing a simple ivory dress. There were no elaborate decorations. No large wedding. No guests. Only a small ceremony arranged quietly because Junho's grandmother wanted the marriage completed before her surgery. Avery barely recognized herself. She looked like a bride, but she didn't feel like one. A knock sounded on the door. Monica entered. For once, she looked pleased. You look beautiful. Avery looked at her through the mirror. You look happy. I am. Of course you are. Monica ignored the bitterness in her voice. Remember what I told you. Smile. Be polite. Don't cause problems. Avery turned around. You don't get to give me instructions anymore. Monica's face hardened. Be careful. Avery walked past her. For the first time in her life, she didn't lower her eyes. The ceremony lasted less than 30 minutes. Then Avery met Kang Junho. He stood at the front of the small room wearing a perfectly tailored dark suit. He was taller than she expected. Calm, controlled, and completely unreadable. His eyes met hers. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then he extended his hand. Avery hesitated before placing hers in his. His grip was warm and steady. Neither of them smiled. Neither of them pretended this was romantic. They both knew it was an arrangement. After the ceremony, Junho's grandmother approached Avery. Her eyes were soft with emotion. "Thank you for doing this for my grandson." Avery forced a smile. "You're welcome." The older woman squeezed her hand. "I hope he makes you happy." Avery glanced at Junho. He was standing several feet away, speaking quietly with his lawyer. She looked back at his grandmother. "I hope so too." It was the first lie she told as his wife. That evening, Junho drove Avery to his Atlanta estate. The gates opened automatically as they approached. Avery stared through the window. She had seen beautiful houses before. She had never seen anything like this. The estate was enormous, but not flashy. Glass walls overlooked a landscaped garden. Warm lights illuminated the entrance. Everything was quiet, almost too quiet. Junho glanced at her. "You can relax." Avery looked at him. "I'm trying." He nodded. "I know this isn't what either of us would have chosen." That surprised her. "You didn't choose it either?" He gave a small smile. "I chose the arrangement, not the person." Avery looked away. At least he was honest. When they entered the house, a housekeeper greeted them. "Welcome home, Mr. Kong." Junho nodded. Then he turned toward Avery. "I'll show you your room." "Your room?" He looked at her. "We agreed to separate bedrooms." Avery nodded. "Good." He studied her expression. "There are rules." "Of course there are." He led her into the study and placed a folder on the desk. 1 year. Separate bedrooms. Separate finances. No interference in each other's work. No questions about the past. In public, we act like a married couple. In private, we remain independent. Avery nodded. "Anything else?" He looked directly at her. "No falling in love." Avery almost laughed. "Don't worry. I'm not interested in falling in love with a stranger." Something flickered in his eyes. "Good." He closed the folder. Then he walked her toward the bedroom. Avery opened the door and stopped. The room didn't look like a guest room. It looked prepared specifically for her. Her favorite type of books were arranged on the shelves. Fresh flowers sat beside the bed. The wardrobe was filled with clothes in her size. She walked into the bathroom. Her shampoo, her skincare products, even the brand of tea she drank every morning was waiting on the counter. She turned toward him. "How did you know all this?" Junho stood at the doorway. "My assistant asked your stepmother." Avery's expression changed. "Of course." He noticed. "Something wrong?" "Nothing." She turned away. Junho watched her for another moment. Then he said quietly, "You don't have to pretend with me when we're alone." Avery looked back at him. "Neither do you." For the first time, neither of them knew what to say. Junho left. Avery closed the door. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked around the beautiful room. She had entered this marriage believing she had been sold to a stranger. She didn't know yet that the stranger was about to become the first person who would notice how much she had been forced to carry alone. The first week of their marriage passed almost exactly as Avery expected. They barely saw each other. Junho left for work early every morning and returned late in the evening. Avery spent most of her days trying to understand how her new life was supposed to work without the bakery, without her parents' house, and without knowing what would happen when the 12 months were over. They ate breakfast at opposite ends of the same table. They exchanged polite greetings. They rarely asked personal questions. Should have been easy. That was what Avery kept telling herself. This was a contract. Nothing more. The only time their arrangement became complicated was when Madame Kong came to stay at the estate. She arrived on a Tuesday afternoon with 2 nurses and enough luggage to make it look as though she intended to stay for months. Junho met her at the entrance. Avery stood beside him, trying to remember how a wife was supposed to behave around her husband's grandmother. Madame Kong looked at her for several seconds. Then she smiled. "Come here, my dear." Avery stepped forward. Madame Kong took both her hands. Avery glanced at Junho. He looked almost amused. Grandmother saw it. Junho cleared his throat. "Grandmother." "What?" The older woman smiled innocently. Avery couldn't help smiling. It was the first genuine smile she had given since the wedding. Madame Kong looked at her grandson. You haven't been bothering her, have you? No. Are you sure? Yes. Avery looked down. Junho was silent. Madame Kong squeezed Avery's hand. Don't worry. He looks frightening, but he is actually very boring. Avery laughed. Junho stared at both of them. Grandmother. What? You are already embarrassing me. Good. That evening, Madame Kong insisted that they have dinner together. Avery sat beside Junho. Under the table, his hand briefly touched hers. She looked at him. He whispered quietly, "Smile." She immediately remembered the contract. Right? They were supposed to look like a married couple. So Avery smiled. Junho placed his hand lightly against the back of her chair. Madame Kong watched them with obvious satisfaction. For the first time, Avery understood why he had agreed to this arrangement. He loved his grandmother deeply, and perhaps that was the first thing she began to respect about him. The next morning, Avery woke to the smell of tea. She opened her bedroom door. A cup sat on the small table outside. She looked around. No one was there. She picked it up. Honey. No sugar. Exactly how she liked it. Avery frowned. She carried the cup downstairs. Junho was sitting at the kitchen island reading something on his tablet. Did you leave this outside my room? He looked up. Yes. Why? You drink tea in the morning. That doesn't explain how you knew what I take. He shrugged. You told the housekeeper. I did? The night you arrived. Avery stared at him. She didn't remember saying it. He returned to his tablet. Is it wrong? No. She sat across from him. Thank you. You're welcome. That was it. No smile. No flirtation. Nothing romantic. But something had changed. For the first time, Avery wondered whether she had misjudged him. Not completely. Just slightly. Days passed. The tea continued. So did the distance between them. Until one night Avery came downstairs at nearly midnight. She couldn't sleep. She found Junho in the kitchen. His tie was gone. His sleeves were rolled up. He was standing in front of the coffee machine, looking more exhausted than she had ever seen him. You're still awake? He looked over. So are you? I asked first. He smiled faintly. Work. Avery poured herself water. Bad day? He nodded. Board meeting. She sat at the island. What happened? He looked at her. You aren't supposed to ask about my work. She immediately stood. Right. Sorry. He watched her for a moment. Then he said, Min-suk tried to challenge one of my decisions. Who is Min-suk? My cousin. Avery sat back down. And what happened? I won. She smiled. You sound very confident. I usually am. That made her laugh. Junho smiled too. For several seconds, they simply looked at each other. Then Avery looked away. It was strange. She had spent weeks thinking of him as a stranger. But sitting there in the quiet kitchen, he suddenly felt less distant. He looked at her. How was your day? Avery hesitated. Fine. That's not an answer. She looked at him. Why do you care? He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, Because you're my wife. Avery raised an eyebrow. Contractually. He nodded. Contractually. Neither of them smiled. But neither looked away. The following morning, Avery received a call from Monica. She almost didn't answer. When she finally did, Monica didn't bother with pleasantries. I need money. Avery closed her eyes. For what? Don't ask questions. I don't have money. You live in a billionaire's house now. That doesn't mean his money belongs to me. Monica's voice became sharper. You wouldn't have that house or bakery if it weren't for me. Avery gripped the phone. You mean if it weren't for the debts you created? Don't start. I am not giving you anything. Monica laughed. We'll see. The call ended. Avery stared at her phone. She didn't notice Junho standing in the doorway. Who was that? Avery looked up. My stepmother. His expression changed slightly. What did she want? Nothing. Junho studied her face. You look upset. I'm fine. He didn't push. Instead, he walked over and placed a cup of tea beside her. Honey, no sugar. Avery looked at it, then at him. Thank you. He nodded and walked away. She watched him leave. It was such a small thing, but somehow it mattered. Over the next few weeks, small things continued happening. He never made a big announcement about any of it. He simply noticed, and Avery began noticing him too. The way he always checked on his grandmother before leaving for work. The way he listened when people spoke, even when he disagreed. The way his entire expression softened whenever Madame Kong entered a room. The man she had imagined before meeting him didn't exist. There was something else beneath the billionaire. Something quieter. Something lonely. But Avery refused to let herself get too close. They had a contract. And contracts ended. She reminded herself of that every night. Even when she found herself waiting for the sound of his car returning. Even when his footsteps in the hallway made her look up from her book. Even when she started smiling whenever she found tea outside her door. She told herself none of it meant anything. Not yet. And neither of them knew that Monica was about to make another move that would bring Avery's past directly into their new life. The following Monday, Avery received another call from the bank. She almost ignored it. Then she saw the number. She answered immediately. Hello? The woman on the other end introduced herself as the bank's property officer and asked Avery to confirm that she was now the legal owner of the Willow Creek property. Avery frowned. Yes. There was a pause. Then the woman said something that made Avery sit upright. We received a request concerning the property this morning. From who? Your stepmother. Avery's stomach tightened. What kind of request? She is attempting to refinance the property. Avery stood so quickly that her chair scraped against the floor. She can't. The property officer sounded uncomfortable. That's why I'm calling you. Your signature is required. Avery ended the call and immediately called Monica. You tried to refinance the house? Monica didn't even deny it. I need money. You already used the property to borrow money. And you married a rich man. What's the problem? Avery's voice trembled with anger. The problem is that you don't own the house. Monica went silent. Then she said something that chilled Avery. You may own it on paper, but you wouldn't have it if I hadn't saved it. You didn't save anything. You put it in danger. Watch yourself, Avery. No. Avery's voice became steadier. I'm done watching myself while you destroy everything my parents built. Monica laughed. You think marrying that man has made you powerful? No. It has made me realize I don't have to be afraid of you anymore. The call ended. Avery stood motionless. She didn't notice Junho enter the room. He had heard enough. What happened? She turned around. Nothing. Avery. She looked at him. My stepmother tried to borrow against my parents' house again. His expression hardened. Does she still have access to the property? No. But she has been doing this for years. Why didn't you tell me? Because it isn't your problem. He walked closer. You're my wife. Avery almost smiled. Contractually. His jaw tightened. You keep saying that. Because it's true. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, not everything has to be a contract. Avery didn't know how to respond. Before she could, his phone rang. He answered. Yes. He listened. Then his expression changed. I'll handle it. He ended the call. What happened? Avery asked. My grandmother's doctor moved her surgery forward. Avery's face softened. Is she okay? She's stable. He picked up his jacket. I'm going to the hospital. I'll come with you. He looked at her. You don't have to. I know. A small smile appeared on his face. Then let's go. At the hospital, Avery saw a completely different side of Junho. He barely left his grandmother's room. He spoke to the doctors himself. He made sure the nurses had everything they needed. And when Madame Kong woke, the first person she looked for was him. You came. Of course I came. She smiled. And you brought my granddaughter-in-law. Avery laughed softly. I couldn't let you have all the fun without me. Madame Kong smiled. Good. Junho looked at Avery. She was sitting beside his grandmother's bed, holding the older woman's hand. For the first time, the word wife didn't sound like a role. It sounded dangerously close to something real. That evening, Madame Kong fell asleep. Avery stepped into the hallway. Junho followed. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "Being here." She looked at him. "She's your grandmother. That doesn't make your presence less meaningful." Avery looked away. "You don't have to thank me." He stepped closer. "I know." She smiled. "You really like saying that. Only when you're trying to convince me I don't need to thank you." Avery laughed. For a moment, they stood there smiling at each other. Then the elevator doors opened, and Min-suk stepped out. Junho's expression immediately changed. Min-suk looked at Avery. "So this is the famous wife." Avery frowned. "Famous?" Min-suk smiled. "Junho doesn't usually bring people into his life." "She's not people," Junho said. "She's my wife." The words were simple, but something inside Avery shifted. Min-suk noticed. "Of course." He looked between them and smiled. "Congratulations." Then he walked away. Avery turned to Junho. "He seems charming." "He's not." "I noticed." Junho looked toward the elevator. "He has wanted my position for years. And now? Now he has another reason to want me gone." Avery looked at him. "Because of me? Because he thinks you are a weakness." Avery smiled faintly. "He doesn't know me very well." Junho looked at her. "No, he doesn't." And there was something in the way he said it that made Avery's heart beat faster. She looked away before he could notice. That night, when they returned to the estate, Avery found an envelope waiting outside her bedroom. There was no name on it. She opened it. Inside were photographs. Photographs of Monica. Monica leaving expensive restaurants. Monica entering a jewelry store. Monica meeting a man Avery didn't recognize. And beneath the photographs was a handwritten note. "You don't know what your stepmother has done." Avery's blood ran cold. She read the note again. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Junho. She quickly turned the photographs over. But he had already seen her expression. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." He walked closer. "Avery." She looked at him. "Someone is trying to tell me something about Monica." His eyes narrowed. "Let me see." Avery hesitated. Then she handed him the photographs. He studied them one by one. "Who sent these?" "I don't know." He turned over the final photograph. There was another message written on the back. "Ask her where the $20 million came from." Junho went completely still. Avery looked at him. "What?" He raised his eyes. $20 million? Avery's face changed. That was the amount Monica received for arranging this marriage. Junho stared at her. "Monica told you that?" "No." Avery swallowed. "I found out after the wedding." His expression darkened. "She didn't arrange this marriage for you." Avery looked confused. "Then why?" Junho didn't answer. He picked up his phone. "Because I need to find out exactly what your stepmother did before you ever met me." For the first time, Avery realized that the marriage contract might not be the only thing Monica had lied about. And somewhere inside her, a fear she had been carrying for years began turning into something else. The beginning of the truth. Junho did not sleep that night. Avery heard his study door open long after midnight. By morning, he had gathered enough to know they needed to talk to a professional, and by the following afternoon, they were both sitting in Mr. Yun's office. Mr. Yun studied the photographs, then set them aside. "This confirms nothing on its own," he said, "but it's enough reason to look closer at the marriage payment itself." He opened a folder of his own. "The original agreement was prepared here," he said. 3 copies were made. 1 stayed with me. 1 went to Mr. Kong. The 3rd was given to Monica. "Why did Monica have a copy?" Avery asked. "Because she negotiated the arrangement on your behalf," Mr. Yun said. Avery's face hardened. "She never told me that." "I assumed you knew," Mr. Yun said, and pulled another document forward. Monica had signed a financial authorization connected to the arrangement. The $20 million had not simply been a marriage payment. It had been released to Monica under the understanding that she was acting as Avery's legal representative, since Avery had not been present during the negotiations. She represented me? Avery said. Without telling me? Mr. Yoon looked uncomfortable and said nothing. Junho's voice was quiet. Why would she need to represent you at all unless she planned to keep most of it herself? Mr. Yoon pulled bank records forward. The payment had gone to Monica's personal account. Not the bakery. Not the mortgage company. Most of it had been moved through several accounts afterward. Shopping, travel, private accounts, and one payment to someone named Patricia. Avery stared at the number that remained. So little of it had ever reached the debt at all. There was more. A second, smaller payment structure existed alongside the first, one that would pay Monica considerably more if the marriage ended early under certain conditions, and considerably less if it lasted the full 12 months. Avery's hands began to tremble. She had been manipulated from the very beginning, and even her forced marriage had been turned into another way for Monica to profit. I'm sorry, Junho said. For what? That you were dragged into this. I wasn't dragged into it, Avery said. I was sold into it. Mr. Yoon cleared his throat. There is a way to protect you both going forward, he said, and explained that the original agreement could be replaced with a private separation of financial interests, removing every incentive Monica still had left to interfere. What do you want? Junho asked her. The truth, Avery said. Then that's what we'll do. By the time Avery and Junho left the office, Monica's plan was beginning to collapse. But she didn't know that yet. For years, she had been afraid of Monica. Afraid of losing the house. Afraid of losing the bakery. Afraid that one wrong decision would destroy everything her parents had built. But now she had something she had never had before. Proof. Junho followed her outside. They drove in silence. When they arrived at the house, Monica was sitting in the living room with a cup of coffee, completely relaxed. She looked up. Avery. Then her eyes moved to Junho. What is he doing here? Avery walked inside. We know. Monica's expression changed. Know what? Everything. Junho closed the door behind them. The room suddenly felt smaller. Monica looked at Avery. What are you talking about? The $20 million. Monica's face went pale. Avery stepped closer. You didn't use it to save the bakery. You used it to save yourself. That's not true. Then explain the bank transfers. Monica said nothing. Explain Patricia. Still nothing. Avery's voice shook. How could you do this to my parents' legacy? Monica stood. Don't you dare stand there and judge me. I worked for this family too. You worked for yourself. Monica's face twisted. Your father left you everything. Everything. And what did he leave me? Avery froze. Monica laughed bitterly. Do you know what it was like living in the shadow of your mother? She was perfect. The perfect wife. The perfect mother. The perfect baker. Everyone loved her. Even after she died, she was still the woman everyone compared me to. Avery stared at her. So you destroyed everything she built? I deserved something. You didn't deserve my life. Monica slapped her hand against the table. You were always so ungrateful. I worked. I sacrificed. You sacrificed nothing. Avery looked at her in disbelief. I worked every day to pay debts you created. And now you have a billionaire husband. Monica's voice became bitter. You got lucky. No. Avery shook her head. I got betrayed. Junho stepped forward. The property belongs to Avery. Monica turned toward him. Stay out of this. He didn't move. You sold a marriage arrangement without telling her. You accepted money using her circumstances as leverage. And you attempted to refinance property you had no authority to use. Monica's expression hardened. This is a family matter. No. Junho's voice was calm. It became my matter when you used my name and my money to manipulate my wife. Monica stared at him. You bought her. The room went silent. Junho's expression changed. No. He looked at Avery. I made an arrangement with her. You sold her into it. Monica laughed. What's the difference? Junho didn't answer. Avery did. Everything. She walked toward the door. Monica called after her. If you leave, don't expect me to be here when you come back. Avery stopped. Then she turned. You won't be here. Monica's eyes narrowed. What? Avery held her gaze. I'm taking back the house. And the bakery. Everything my parents built. Monica smiled coldly. You think you can throw me out? Avery looked at Junho. No. She turned back to Monica. I know I can. For the first time, Monica looked afraid. But Avery wasn't finished. The investigation moved quickly. The bank froze Monica's remaining accounts. The refinancing attempt was cancelled. The bakery's finances were audited. And what investigators found was worse than Avery had imagined. Years of hidden transactions. Loans taken without her knowledge. A forged signature or two along the way. By the end of the week, Monica's name was gone from every business record. She left the house with 2 suitcases. You'll regret this, she said at the door. No, Avery said. I regret trusting you. Then she closed the door. It's over, Junho said, coming up behind her. Not completely, Avery said, looking toward the bakery through the window. I still have to rebuild what she destroyed. Then we'll rebuild it, he said. You keep saying we, she said, smiling. I'm getting used to it, he said. There were 3 months left on the contract, and for the first time, Avery understood that whatever came next was actually going to be her choice. She walked through the bakery alone that afternoon. The ovens were silent. The chairs were stacked. Dust covered the counter. Avery placed her hand on the old wooden surface. Her mother had stood here. Her father had stood here. And now she was standing there too. The bakery began changing almost immediately. New equipment. Old recipes back on the menu. Daniel came by more often now, helping her make sense of years of tangled records with the same quiet patience he'd shown her as a teenager, never once asking for anything in return. Customers returned. Avery hired help. Within a month, the bakery was busier than it had been in years. Junho never tried to run it for her. He simply showed up. Coffee some mornings. Lunch some afternoons. Sometimes he just sat quietly in the corner while she finished the accounts. One evening she found him asleep at one of the tables, a stack of invoices beside him. He asked, startled, You scared me. You came here after work. I missed you, he said, seeming surprised by his own words. Avery smiled. Don't explain, she said. For once, he didn't. They drove home together in comfortable silence. At the estate, Avery didn't want to get out of the car. 6 months ago, I didn't know you existed, she said. Now I can't imagine this house without you in it. Neither could I, he said, and reached across the console and took her hand. He didn't pull her closer. He didn't kiss her. He simply held her hand, and Avery let him, and for the first time neither of them was pretending. Not long after, an anonymous photograph reached Junho's office. Avery, standing close to a man outside a restaurant, taken from an angle that made it look like more than it was. Ask your wife who he is, the note said. He confronted her that evening, the photograph on the table between them. His name is Daniel, Avery said. My mother's old accountant. He helped me when I was drowning in the bakery's books. That's all. Were you in love with him? No. I believe you, Junho said. But I realized I was jealous, seeing another man standing that close to you. Avery smiled. Good, she said. Now you know how I feel whenever women look at you like you're something they can have. So you get jealous too, he said, a slow smile spreading. Maybe. Enough, she admitted. Then we're even, he said, and the tension between them dissolved into something warmer than either expected. 3 months later, Avery found an envelope waiting on the bakery counter. Junho stood a few feet away. Your contract, he said. 3 days left. Inside were the original documents, the same 12-month marriage, the same expiration date, a line at the bottom for both of them to sign. What happens after this? She asked. I'm choosing to ask you properly, he said, and pulled a small velvet box from his jacket. Inside was a simple diamond ring, elegant and quiet. Nothing chosen to impress anyone but her. I don't want another contract, he said, I don't want to marry you because my grandmother needs me to. I want you to marry me because you want me. You waited until 3 days before the contract ended? She asked, eyes filling. I wanted to make sure you never wondered whether I was asking because I had to. And what if I say no? She asked. I'll still love you, he said. That was the answer she needed. Not pressure. Not a promise with conditions. Just love. It's a yes, she said, taking the ring from the box herself. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. And this time, when he placed the ring on her finger, there was no lawyer watching, no grandmother waiting for proof, no contract. Just two people who had accidentally found something neither had been looking for. 3 days later, they returned to Mr. Yun's office and closed out the original agreement for good. So Junho said afterward, I suppose I have to start courting my wife properly. I'm not your wife yet, Avery said. Not legally. Would you like to go on our first real date then? Their first date was at the bakery after closing. A small table near the window, candles, her mother's favorite flowers, a cake from one of the bakery's oldest recipes. This is where your life began, he said, and where I fell in love with you. I think I fell in love with you here too, she said. Months later, Avery stood in the bakery for its grand reopening. Freshly painted walls, new ovens, her mother's recipes displayed behind the counter, her parents' photograph hanging above the register. I did it, Mom, she said quietly. I brought it back. We did it, Junho said, slipping his hand into hers. There it is again, she said. We get used to it, she told him. I plan to, he said, and kissed her forehead as the doors opened and customers poured in. 1 year later, Avery stood in front of the bakery before sunrise. The sign above the door still carried her mother's name. Brooks Bakery. There were 3 locations now, but she had kept the original exactly as it was. The old wooden counter, her parents' photograph, and every morning, the first batch of bread made from her mother's handwritten recipe. The one thing she refused to change. That afternoon, Junho arrived with flowers. You're early, she said. I missed my wife. You saw me 6 hours ago. That's a long time, he said, and she laughed, because he had become dramatic, and he told her she had made him this way. That evening, sitting outside beneath the old sign, Avery noticed a woman waiting at the bus stop across the street. Older, tired, holding a small suitcase. Monica, do you want to go inside? Junho asked. No, Avery said, watching her step onto the bus. Why? Because I don't need to. That was the greatest victory of all. She didn't need Monica's apology. She didn't need revenge. Monica had already lost the house, the bakery, the money, the power she once held. What Avery had gained instead was something Monica could never take from her again. Peace. I think they'd be proud, she said, looking back at her parents' photograph glowing in the window. I know they would, Junho said. For years, Avery had believed she had to sacrifice herself to keep her family together. She had worked until she was exhausted, paid debts she didn't create, protected someone who was quietly destroying everything her parents had built. When Monica sold her into a marriage for money, Avery had believed that was the moment her life was ruined. She had been wrong. It was the moment she finally discovered her own worth. The marriage she never wanted became the love she never expected. The house she almost lost became hers again. The bakery her stepmother nearly destroyed became more successful than it had ever been. And the woman who had spent years controlling her life became nothing more than a chapter Avery had already finished reading. Ready? Junho asked, offering his hand. Always, she said. They walked into the bakery together and turned off the lights. The sign stayed glowing above them. Brooks Bakery. Her mother's legacy. Her father's dream. Her own victory. And beside her was the man she had once married because she had no choice, and now loved because, for the first time in her life, she did. There had been a contract. There had been 12 months. There had been an expiration date. But love had never been part of the agreement. And that was the one thing neither of them had planned for. The end. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up subscribe and share to others. Also leave a comment to share your thought about the story.